In June AD 967, Nikephoros II toured the fortresses of Thrace. This was in response to increased Magyar raids into the Balkans. Emperor Romanus II had already dealt with 2 incursions from them during his short reign. During his successor's reign, bands of Magyars also raided Thrace. The emperor decided to inspect the area and wrote a letter to Tsar Peter of Bulgaria asking him to prevent the Magyars from raiding Eastern Roman territory. John Zonaras records the Tsar's reply, stating, "When they came to us, you would not help us, but now we have been forced to make a treaty with them." Despite having been at peace with the Romans since 927, relations between the 2 countries had clearly started to break down over the Magyar issue. With the situation on the Balkan frontier deteriorating, a new strategy was needed. The Rus, who were to the north of the Roman themes in the Crimea, were threatening the imperial provinces. Nikephoros II decided to induce the Rus into attacking the Bulgars with a large payment of gold. In August 968, their Grand Prince Sviatoslav raided the Danube regions of Bulgaria, capturing Dristra. While diplomatic relations continued between the Eastern Roman and Bulgarian empires, the long peace they had enjoyed was coming to an end. In AD 695, the situation in the Balkans had changed upon the return of the emperor to Constantinople from his campaign against Antioch. The conquest of the Danube area by the Rus placed them in a collision course with the Eastern Roman Empire, and the death of the Tsar meant a potentially hostile Bulgaria. The emperor arranged a marriage alliance for Basil II and Constantine VIII to 2 of Tsar Boris II's daughters. However, Sviatoslav launched a full-scale invasion of Bulgaria with allies from the Magyars and Pechenegs. Together they defeated the Bulgarian army, captured the capital of Preslav, and reduced the Tsar to a vassal of the Grand Prince. In AD 968, there was a famine in the empire. This was normally bad enough, but was made worse when the emperor and his brother Leo sold grain at artificially high prices to raise extra money for the treasury. Profiteering off of starving people meant practically everyone loathed the emperor, and several Latin sources credit this incident for causing the demise of Nikephoros II. In October AD 968, the emperor himself and his army arrived in Cilicia, cut a path from Myafarakin to Antioch, and then from there to Emesa, deep in Syria, looting and destroying everything on their way. At Emesa, he gained possession of the head of St. John the Baptist, a highly prized holy relic. The Eastern Roman army then burned their way across to Tripoli, sacked Acre, and while returning from their punitive expedition, negotiated the surrender of Laodicea, establishing a new Armenian theme. Upon arrival at the Bagarus Pass near Antioch, the army built a fort blockading the city. Michael Boutzes and Peter the Eunuch were placed in command of 1,500 soldiers to ravage the area around Antioch and maintain the blockade. Meanwhile, Nikephoros II returned to Constantinople, arriving there by the beginning of the next year. While the emperor was away, Michael Boutzes disobeyed his orders, inducing a guard to betray the city of Antioch. During the night, he sneaked a force up a ladder, then captured a tower. The Romans held the tower 3 days from attacks by the defenders. On the 28th of October, Peter the Eunuch finally decided to help Boutzes and was let into the city by friendly troops. Boutzes went in person to tell the emperor about his conquest of Antioch, but was dismissed from service for insubordination. On the same day, Caesar Bardus, Nikephoros II's father, died aged 90. The last notable act of the emperor's reign was his elaborate assassination. On the night of the 10th of December, AD 969, Nikephoros II was murdered by a conspiracy of army officers, including John Tzimiskes, Michael Boutzes, and 4 others, with the Empress Theophano being an accessory to the murder. As might be expected, there are many accounts of the murder, and just as many reasons for explaining it. The salient points are as follows. There were two main motives for the assassination. Tzimiskes and his other officers had grievances against Nikephoros II and the Phokas family. Tzimiskes' own ambition had been checked in AD 965 by the emperor by being dismissed from service. The other element was the estrangement between the Empress Theophano and Nikephoros II, which seems why matters came to a head specifically in AD 969. In Skylitzes' version, Theophano was sexually frustrated due to the neglect of her husband and came to loathe him, having fallen in love with John Tzimiskes instead. She wanted him to take the throne and be with her. In Yahya and Zonaras' version, the brother of the emperor, Bardus Phokas, was plotting to castrate Basil II and Constantine VIII and declare Leo Phokas the heir to Nikephoros II. She allied with John Tzimiskes more as a desperate move to save her children than anything else. The evidence for a love affair is also conspicuously absent. Once again we are presented with the good and evil portraits of Theophano, portraits that have dogged her entire historical record. Since all of these accounts are based upon rumours and propaganda, it is difficult to discern the facts. Perhaps some stock can be placed in the fact that the later historians, Yahya of Antioch, Michael Psellus, and John Zonaras, considered both the rumours of a love affair and a threat to eliminate her children as valid. There are two main versions of the plot. Leo the Deacon and Yahya of Antioch state that soon after the funeral of Caesar Bardus, the Empress Theophano begged her husband to release John Tzimiskes from his house arrest, return to Constantinople, resume his duties, and seek a new wife after Maria Sclerina, his first wife, died of illness. The emperor agreed and summoned John to Constantinople. Together, Theophano and he spent time preparing the plot, meeting in secret and smuggling the conspirators into the palace. On the 10th of December, Theophano persuaded Nikephoros to leave his bedchamber unlocked so she could visit him later. The assassins entered the emperor's room and murdered him. John Skylitzes says that Tzimiskes arrived in Chalcedon and was refused entry to Constantinople by the emperor. During the night, the empress brought him and his 5 conspirators into the port near the palace and hauled them up in a basket. Then they immediately proceeded to break into the emperor's bedchamber and murdered him. Both versions converge concerning the assassination. The assassins found Nikephoros II sleeping on the floor on top of a bearskin and blanket. John kicked him to wake him up, and then an assassin, Leo Ablantes, struck him on the forehead with his sword. Dazed, they hauled him over to Tzimiskes, who shouted abuse at him. Tzimiskes then pulled at his beard, while the others smashed his jaw with their sword handles. Hearing that the imperial guards were approaching, the assassins drove their swords into his body and cut off his head. John Tzimiskes proclaimed himself emperor and negotiated with the patriarch to legitimize his position. The day after the assassination, the Empress Theophano was sent into exile on the island of Prote. So much for Nikephoros Phokas. Nikephoros II, like many great figures in history, was a controversial one. His reign saw improved efficiency and greater state finances to fund constant aggressive warfare. He safeguarded the emperors Basil II and Constantine VIII. His laws sought to keep the wealth of the church in check and addressed a number of outstanding social issues from his day in a just manner. He sponsored the Great Lavra Monastery, a major monastic institution whose legacy continues to this day. The military was increased in size, expanding the cores of cataphracts and adding dozens new Armenian themes. He also introduced the ducal command of Chaldea. Furthermore, he authored a military manual, the Praeceptor Militaria, improving the military education of his commanders. The attempts of the new Holy Roman Emperor to take over northern Italy were rebuffed at every turn. Beneath this blaze of triumph and success lay a darker side to his reign, profiteering in the face of famine at the expense of ordinary people, temporarily destabilizing the monetary economy with the Tetrarteron, a growing paranoia an unchecked military favoritism that often backfired on civilians. By the end of his reign, he needed a wall to protect him from his own people. The serial failures in Sicily, as well as his own usurpation of power, all speak of the iron and bloodshed he promised Joseph Bringas when he took the throne. It is said that by 968 he was hated by all men, and everybody longed to see his fall. Yet, in just 6 years, he achieved a huge amount as emperor. The Emperor Nikephoros III even claimed to be a descendant of his, and for generations after his death, he was remembered as one of the great soldier emperors of the Eastern Roman Empire. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to like and subscribe. Thank you to my generous patrons for your support. The next video will be about the reign of John Zimisces, and this has been Eastern Roman History.